Go on.
She get some rest. So you had a question about something?
Why we're always competing? It's because we're trying to find who we are, um, comparing ourselves with another ones.
I think that's changed. I think the hardest part I have in the martial arts is getting to people not to compete. All right, so what's changed in competition now is that it's become a matter of money and ego. It's always been an ego problem, I think, but it's become like a competition, or all competitions, it's like not just being the best, but we're all going for the prize. And competition or anything materially only lasts for a short time in your life. You know, you're only good for however long that space of time is. You know, you can only be Muhammad Ali for so long. You know, so competition is competition. Competing is a matter of when you're competing against another or having that competition other than materially. In other words, people viewing you, paying to come and see something, and you're competing for a prize or to be number one in whatever that may be. Boxing, tennis, mixed martial arts, or whatever it may be. But it deals with money and people and whatnot. So that kind of competition is based on a material or entertainment world. Competition, I think, is mistaken when two people are truly trying to learn something. And if it comes into competition, then it only becomes ego. You know, where the other person doesn't want to look bad in front of that person that they're dealing with or moving against, or doesn't want to look bad on the other people that are watching, and wants to feel good when they go home. It's not about competition. That's where this gets misconfused. The misconfusion there is that, or the confusion of that is when two people are facing each other, it's not about competing. It's not about the competition. Everything at that point should be a challenge of learning more about who and what you are. And that's where growth comes in. So if you take the material part out of it, if you're able to rest the ego, discover the ego, every martial art, or the reason why Shaolin was at one point, I think, top of its game, was it was a matter of stripping away the egos. So basically, when you come back to that, it's about confronting your ego, seeing your ego, and basically getting naked in front of yourself. You know, and you know, most people when they look at themselves naked don't really like what they see. You know, so we do different things to mask it. We do different things to disguise it. But real ego is about not liking what you see. You know, discovering what that is, stripping yourself down. Then it doesn't become competition, it becomes self-challenging. So there is no absolute, there's only challenge. So the hardest part is when you get into that, the first part of like the idea of two people working in front of each other, what sizes they may be, stripping away the ego and stripping away your survival instincts. So in the entertainment community, whatever it may be, professional wrestling, mixed martial arts, boxing, tennis, football, it's about entertainment and about competing in that world. But it's not really competing in your world. It's about being the best that you can be so you can make the most money and you become the most famous of what you do. And that's where people compete. And they get confused with that atmosphere and they compete in everything that they do. Their job, their, you know, somebody, you know, next to you driving, you try and go back and forth. There's all these competitions we have, but really it's about self-challenge. So if you look at what sparring is supposed to be, it's supposed to be working its way out of the brainstem. In other words, not working with your survival instincts that kick in, your ego instincts of wanting to on a material and social level, and your survival instincts dealing with, you know, the idea of, you know, being better than the other person, being more alpha, you know, and being able to defeat that other person. It's really sparring, and the idea of the competition, a true competition in there, is when you stop being, competing competing against each other and start challenging yourself to become. So if you are dealing with somebody, it's not about beating that person so you can go home and feel good. And we all know that, no matter what that may be, you may get that punch in, you may get that move in, or whatever it is. Doesn't mean it's going to be effective. It just means that you go home feeling good about yourself. Oh, well, I hit him in the eye. So what? Doesn't mean you stopped him. So the real idea of sparring is not about challenging, it's about becoming. So if you're working with a person that's bigger than you, or better than you, or worse than you, it's about amalgamating yourself to that person and becoming that person, almost like shadowing them. When you can shadow that person, when you can understand if that person's fighting from a fire element, an earth element, a water element, or steel element, or a wood element, or a mixture of different elements. When you can become that, when you can master that, when you can discover the rhythm, then you can defeat them at any time. So that's the challenge. It's not about your ego making yourself feel good, or it's the idea of challenging, of balancing that out. Then you always see a way in, you always know how to react in any situation that you do. But if you're competing, then you're only trying to prove to yourself that you're better. Like, I have the bigger stick, I'm the more alpha, I'm this, that, and the other thing, and you lose the meaning behind humanity. You lose the meaning about what you're really trying to find, and it becomes material. Every movie we watch and everything is about a person who's the underdog that somehow at the end becomes, does something right, is a hero. So we walk away from the movies feeling good about it. But real life doesn't really work that way. And movies, make money on making you feel good, that, because we all picture ourselves being that person that gets through it. The movies that aren't not that good are when you walk away feeling bad about the movie. Wow, that movie, boy, it was horrible. Like, I feel so bad. But you want to go home and you want to feel good about the movie. Somehow your imagination that doesn't really recognize thinks that's really happening. And you put yourself in that character, in that personality. So if you truly want to grow, you have to realize that there is challenge, but the challenge is yourself, and the challenge is to become. So when you're facing your opponent, it's not really about beating your opponent, and the other person should be doing the same thing. If you're facing a person that's 6'9" and weighs 380 pounds, and you're, 5'7" and weigh 170 pounds, both people are trying to understand each other's environment, where they're coming from. That's growth. That's out of ego, and that's out of the brainstem. That's what Musashi was talking about, having a favorite sword. Because you could have a guy that's very talented, and he has his moves, and you defeat all those moves, he's crushed. Everything becomes the sword, and that's where you get into the unsheathed sword. Everything is always go, everything is always open, everything is always being discovered. And the sword has to constantly be honed and sharpened so that you can cut through adversity. So it's not about competing. Competing is very material, very social, very society, what we're looking to do. It's about challenging who and what you are through the discovery of your job, what you're doing at your job, what you're doing in your relationship, what you're doing with the person that's standing in front of you. You're never more alive, I think, than when somebody points a gun to your head and says they're going to blow your brains out. Because it's at that point you realize life's pretty important.